Hi, this is School Committee Update. Today we're with Ward 4 member Andre Green. I'm Sarah Fishman. How are you doing, Andre?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, good. So let's do real quick background.
Sure.
How long have you been on the school committee?
Almost 9 years now.
So 20...
I was elected in 2015 to office in January 2026.
Okay. And what are your subcommittee or other responsibilities?
So I serve on the Finance and Facilities Subcommittee. I am the school committee representative to the Children's Cabinet, to CAS, where I also serve as board president, and I will be taking up responsibilities as the school committee representative to the Winter Hill Building Committee and the Mayor's advisory group on those
What
decisions
about
as well.
the special policing?
That is complete.
It doesn't.
We finished that work.
Okay. All right. And you are a busy individual.
So I'm told.
Yes. So what do you have work outside of school committee? What
Yes.
do you, if you could just briefly say?
The short form of my work is I head up the Boston Foundation's workforce development efforts. As you mentioned, I'm on school committee. I was one of the last class of Tufts Neighborhood Fellows, so I am currently working on my Master of Public Policy. And I have my daughter.
Yes. Who is how old?
My daughter is going to be 11 in a few weeks. Well, October 16th.
She's in 5th grade.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So now let's talk about half-day Wednesdays.
Sure. I prefer to call them early release since they're no longer half a day.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good to know.
The short form is
Yes.
by moving all Wednesdays from the current old system where we had 14 days where they ended at noon and the rest they didn't. Now every Wednesday ends at 1.
Okay.
Ish. And the reason for that is to give teachers what the jargon is for, is common planning time.
Right.
Which is a jargony way of saying teachers would work better and have better long-term instructional planning if they could do it together. Mm-hmm. So those Wednesdays, teachers spend some of it working on their own stuff, but most of it spent working either across grade spans, district-wide, across grade spans, lengthwise across school, but really developing better curriculum cohesion, better strategic thinking, adopting best practices. Other districts that have adopted it have seen market increase and student learning. We expect to see the same.
So that was one question I was going to ask, but I want to go back about the student learning. I just want to go back. So a concrete example of this would be like standardizing homework for a single grade or something like that?
That could be one strategy, yep. Making sure that, time and time, make sure that what a student is learning, especially in the middle grades, what a student is learning in, say, social studies, correlates with what they're learning in math. Like if we want to see that kind of interdisciplinary approach, which we say we want, teachers need time to do that work.
Right, right. So you support this?
100%.
Okay. And the loss of instructional time, it's like 10 hours over the year or something like that?
So, depending on how you calculate it, somewhere between 3 and 4%.
Okay.
And my feeling is, if we don't see at least a 4% increase in learning, like we don't think, then we did something wrong, because
you could go back?
I mean, we could go back. I think I would be surprised if we didn't see we didn't see what we thought was a 3 to 4% increase in learning. And I think if we did, we would be trying to figure out why that time was being used well.
So how is that measured? Because how can you measure an impact of student learning on something like that?
So I think, obviously, well, I'm not gonna say we're not gonna use test scores. We probably will, but that's not, I don't think, the only or the primary. Some of it, like all learning, is qualitative. We'll be using student experience, educator experience. I think, somewhere where we try to have this radical position that our teachers actually know what they're doing. And so, like, if you assume that teachers are professionals, certainly I know in my profession, even if I don't have necessarily hard numbers to back it up, I can tell when a new approach is working or not.
When people are doing better.
Yeah.
What about your daughter? Do you have a sense of?
Well, I think this year it's still too early to tell, right? Like,
Yeah.
But I think for my daughter, you know, she's a tween, so as much as any tween likes anything, she likes going to school. I don't have to fight her for it.
Because some kids, I mean, I remember wanting to stay in school because my brother bothered me, my younger brother bothered me. So different people have, you know.
Right.
But she's good with it. It sounds
Yeah,
like.
you know.
Okay.
You know, she's in that age where there are days when nothing makes her happy, but
Right.
I also think, just as an aside, that schedule stability matters for a lot of families, right? I am blessed to have a job that is incredibly flexible, but I certainly remember being like, wait, do we have a half day?
Yes,
Like,
I know.
So
I
like,
know.
knowing the schedule every week, I think has real advantages, especially for families that may lack flexibility in other ways.
Yeah. Now, I was telling a friend yesterday, and she said, half-day Wednesdays every other week or something. And then she said, no, random. It was random.
Like even if it was every other, that was not plannable.
Yeah.
But it was some weeks and other weeks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I remember being very worried about which it was and trying to write it down ahead when my son was in the schools. Okay, so let's talk now about, I know it's not exactly in the school committee purview, but the public library hours.
Sure.
So as of tomorrow, we're back to regular hours.
Yes.
So students can go from the high school next door, we're in the high school, from here to the library right after school. Can you just give or do you want me to give a blurb on what happened over the last month when hours were restricted, right?
Sure. I think I'm going to try to do this to start neutrally. And
You don't have to sound neutral,
all right. Well,
in my opinion.
Okay. So, you know, I think if you want to talk about what happened, you know, I think you got to go back.
Okay.
As recently, at least as far back as January of this year, the library director was alerting her trustees to incidents and issues and asking for help. For whatever reason, she didn't get help. The libraries were not getting the help they needed. And then literally the evening before school started,
Yes.
there was a public announcement about the change in hours.
So we should probably say that specifically, the library was closed for the 2 or so hours after school every day of the week.
Yes.
And now it's going to be continuously open.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
I think many, if not most people, when I heard the news, was angry.
Is that how you found out, like just the day before?
Yeah.
And how did you find out?
Same way everyone did, via press release. And by press release, I mean a post on social media. I've had the opportunity since then to talk with librarians, talk with parents. So I want to be clear. Librarians and patrons deserve to feel safe in the library. And steps needs to be taken to ensure that. I think what I will say, and I've said over and over again, is we have too many disconnected young people hanging out in the library. Is not a problem, it's an opportunity.
Yes.
I think many cities will kill to have that be the situation, because normally the problem with reaching out to young people is actually getting them. We have them
Right.
in place. This opportunity now is to provide them with more services.
What specifically? Because that was a very powerful quote that you gave the Globe, that, you know, having a bunch of teenagers in one place should not be viewed as a problem, but as an opportunity. And that was a very strong statement. So what would these services look like, or just in practical terms, what
Sure.
would that be?
So I am thrilled to hear the library is hiring a social worker. I hope
Right.
that's not just for the young people, but for anyone who can use the library to access services. Certainly, the city already has social workers and staff that she using that. And I think in general, like, Somerville is not lack for services, right? And if the young people are already at the library, bring those services to them. So like it's partnering with groups like Teen Empowerment, the Welcome Project, and others to bring their services to the library.
That
It
makes
is
sense.
hiring the adult bodies necessary to provide more and better programming. Yes, it is when there's unacceptable behavior, responding accordingly. But I firmly believe if we have more services, more adequately paid caring adults, which means resolving the union contracts so that the librarians are getting the money they deserve and can hire accordingly, we'll have fewer issues.
So what I don't totally get is that this had been going on for a while, right? And presumably people have been struggling but trying to resolve it. So I'm not sure what my question is. How are things going to change, or or is it just that this hasn't been tried as rigorously to bring it in?
So, I think for some of the questions you'd have to ask the administration.
Right.
It seems to me that an opportunity for leadership was missed. I think, the library director represented her staff as well as she could, brought the issue to the attention of others. And again, for whatever reason, those requests went unheeded for a while. I think, the great thing about Somerville, even at times it's maddening, is there is so much brain power here. There's so much commitment to community action here. We should have been, as long ago as last January, really thinking about how do we as a community come together to meet this moment? How do we make sure that young people are getting the services they need, have the security, and balancing that with the need for library to be a place where everyone feels safe.
So did they try to have a police presence or not? I couldn't tell from
I have also, frankly, been unclear on this.
Yeah.
What I've heard is, and I think it's right, I don't think anyone believes that the proper solution is a full-time,
Right.
uniformed, armed officer guarding the library.
Right.
That is not a way to make people feel safe or welcome. I think that is not the same thing as saying that the police play no role in the security of any public space in the city, right? Especially if we are committed to community and neighborhood policing, the library is part of the community and neighborhood. I think, there is so much space for creative thinking between we have to have, a permanent police presence in the library at all times, and the police are never welcome to the library.
Yeah.
I think that's a false dichotomy, and the fact that it gets framed that way does no one any good.
So when you were on this no longer existing special policing subcommittee, that dealt with whether or not there should be a police officer at the high school. Is it at all parallel? I mean,
I think, for me, I think my position is parallel.
okay.
I think, again, we end up in these weird false dichotomies where the only solutions are either the police have carte blanche to do whatever they want,
Right.
or you don't want police presence at all.
Yeah.
And I think most people live in that gray space between.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned that the city's in the process of hiring a social worker. Then the other things they've done is they installed cameras, and they've hired a private security company to have someone there. So all of these things, what do you think? I mean, is this going to help? Is it sufficient?
I'll be honest, I was surprised that there weren't already cameras in the library. I just assume most public spaces at this point have some degree of cameras.
And they said, I think, that the main purpose was to serve as a deterrent, not
That's always the main purpose.
Okay. So that's fair.
Yeah.
What about having the private security person there? Does it depend on what they do, kind of what you just said?
Yeah. And these are questions I have, and I expect to be asking if the mayor attends our school committee meeting is, I think the important thing is to have people who are trained in de-escalation.
Right.
I don't believe that a permanent armed presence necessarily makes people feel safer, but people who are trained in de-escalation, people who are willing to put their bodies between in those instances, I think is right and appropriate. I don't. Again, I think it's going to see how we play out in practice. If the right solution was to have private security there all the time, or again, if we could have solved the same thing by just having it being part of a beat or whatever. I think this is one of the things we'll have to see what happens.
So one of the people in the mayor's office who's been working on this has said that she's going to work to make sure that the communication is better. Do you have a sense, I mean, like, when did you find out that the library hours were going to be reinstated?
Again, through the public announcement.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
We'd heard at school committee meetings, the one right after the announcement, that would be days, not weeks. 2 weeks later, we got a memo announcing some of the proposed changes. We didn't get any heads up that it was going to be open.
So this could be me and my inability to Google, but I went on last night and the hours were still restricted hours. And then I went on like an hour or two later and there was a statement saying that the hours would be as before. And I thought, did I do something wrong or did they not change it until fairly late in the afternoon?
More likely the latter. You know, again, you'd have to ask the administration their thinking. In my experience, the administration tends to not want to announce things until they're
ready to go.
Until all I's are dotted and all T's are crossed.
Okay.
I'm not always sure that's the right strategy. I think people respond to "I don't know" and we're working on it much better than they respond to silence. But
that's the MO. That's the MO.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's talk about using MCAS as a graduation requirement. So in June, you guys, I think unanimously, the school committee unanimously said this, the test should not be used for, right?
And so, well, I think that it was, we passed a resolution first meeting of September because we were on recess over the summer, but
okay.
There's a statewide ballot issue on this issue coming up in November.
Question number 2.
Question 2. So I think, you know, for me, it's a no-brainer. And I think, for me, I think for most people, I think it's not a coincidence that in 2017, there were 23 states that had a standardized test graduation requirement, and now we're down to 7.
Wow. Is that because of COVID or other things?
I think COVID accelerated it.
Okay.
But even before COVID, we were down to 11.
Huh.
It's just
that's an intense number change.
And let's be clear, those seven include such noted educational high performers as Texas, Louisiana, and Florida. So like this notion that this is somehow a protector and guarantor of academic rigor and academic excellence just doesn't cut it. There's no evidence.
Yeah.
And I thought that's the larger issue. There's no evidence that, in fact, not only is there no evidence, there's evidence that they don't. The colleges care about. It doesn't add value to the high school diploma. What it does do is it's guaranteed that since 2018, I want to say, 24 Somerville High School people have completed the curriculum and not gotten diplomas.
That's high, considering some of the
it's
numbers.
Usually a couple every year, yeah.
Yeah. So now let's just say, make sure I'm getting this right, that 10th graders have to pass a math, an English, and then a science technology section of the MCAS. If they don't pass it, they can take it again, right?
They can take it again and again and again until...
As many times?
Yeah.
Okay. And there's actually even some recourse, like you can challenge... Yeah. But that sounds like that would be a pain.
And what usually happens is if you don't pass it the first or second time, you start thinking about dropping out.
And how do you guys even measure that? Is that measurable?
We can't. Or I'm not going to say we can't. I don't have those numbers.
Because that would be very telling, I would think.
Right.
Yeah.
Like we generally, as a general rule,
if
a student drops out, and we have a very low dropout rate, so I don't know if that's happening as much in Somerville as it is in other communities.
Right.
But as a general rule, if a student's not going to get a diploma anyway,
they
start thinking about, well, why shouldn't?
Yeah. Okay, so what was I thinking about next? So what do you think about the counter argument that this is a way of standardizing across the state what graduation means for each school district, or is that not
So we already do that with, and if the state wanted to make the math core curriculum stronger and more incentivized, I would support that. I certainly would support the state developing other more holistic measures.
Like what?
So like we have Somerville and I are long supporters of what's called the MCIEA, with Masters in sort of innovative educational assessments. I support portfolios. I think, in some ways I think standardized tests, which have a place as a diagnostic tool for systems, but when used to measure individual student performance and growth, we've seen it doesn't really work.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? The individual versus the organization.
Standardized tests,
Yeah.
I always want to start by giving them some credit. Standardized tests did a great job of proving what activists of color had been saying for decades, if not generations, which is that schools in poor neighborhoods, schools that serve majority low incomes, majority students of color, weren't receiving the same type of educational outcomes as their richer or whiter peers. One of the big problems with making that our graduation requirement is that it puts the onus on the student, as opposed to saying, hey, no, this is a system problem.
Yes.
Right? In the same way that our current system too often puts the onus on and punishes schools and districts for having the audacity to teach poor kids, rather than being like, hey, we as a society need to be better about helping our low-income students.
So just to make sure I'm getting this to be clear, so these tests have a disproportionately negative impact.
The correlation between socioeconomic status and test score is,
and it's multiple marginalized student groups. It's students of color, it's English language learners, it's differently abled learning. Yeah, so that's hard. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk from high whatever to on the ground, the Winter Hill Community School. So that is, everyone is now at the Edgerly School.
Yes.
So there were some small renovations that were done there.
Yes.
So how is that going? Do you have a sense of how are the students happy? Are the teachers okay with it?
I'm sure they get tired of hearing it. The Winter Hill School is a special place, a special community, and they have shown more resilience than it is fair to ask of any community. Unfortunately, we have to ask them to continue to be resilient until we can get a new building, which I'm going to do everything in my power to be as fast as possible, but it will not be fast. I think, given that, we owe it to them to be on top of everything we can be on top of, to do whatever we can to preempt problems we can preempt, knowing that we ones we can't, knowing that if the Edgerly were suitable to being a full-time school building, we would have been using it as such before this. But anytime we can throw money or time at a problem, make it go away, we should do so.
So what does that translate as? Are you saying that more needs to be done to that building, or are you saying something else?
I would say if we can do more, we should do more.
Okay. So there were some things that were going to be done that haven't been done, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So one of the quirks of our system here is that the actual maintenance, upkeep, improvements of the school buildings is the city's high responsibility.
I was going to, say.
So there's always a dance and of trying to get the two sides on the same page. We were initially disappointed to hear that in the city's perspective, the full range of things we wanted done to the Edgerly would not be possible without triggering the AD requirements to basically get the school and bring it all up to code, which obviously time would not make that a feasible option. We have since heard, I won't say conflicting, we've heard things that complicate the math there, namely, according to the city, work done to bring a building closer to compliance to ADA does not count towards the renovation limit.
Does not count to what limit?
So the way, and I'm gonna butcher this. I apologize, not being either a lawyer or a construction specialist.
Okay.
The way that Americans with Disabilities Act works is that when it was first passed, existing buildings were grandfathered in.
Right, right.
But as you did renovations to those buildings, if you hit a certain, I want to say, percentage of the value of the property,
Okay.
you then had to go ahead and
You had to do more.
make it fully compliant.
Okay, okay. So that's where it's at with that building, with the
Yeah.
edge of?
So what I've asked for, what the school committee asked for, is actually like a breakdown of the proposed innovations and which ones count, which ones don't, so we can actually get a sense of like really in dollar and cents ways where we are. I hope the city provides that information soon. Because I think everything we can reasonably do to make the Edgerly a good temporary home, we have an obligation to do.
So one good thing, right, is that there were some small renovations done that brought the pre-K and the kindergartners, so now everyone's in one place. And as a parent, I would think that makes life so much easier. You're not trying to do drop-off and pick
Yes,
up.
and I want to thank, I want to be clear that my questions are at the policy level. The workers at DPW have done excellent work. They've put in soundproofing, which the difference between, June and last week when I was last there, is night and day.
Huh, that's good.
So like
And
I
they
want,
did something to the kitchen too, didn't they?
they've done work to the kitchen. We have more work to be done, and some of that work to be done at Urgenziano. One of the things we lost when the Winter Hill went offline is that was our production kitchen.
Yes.
So we're establishing a new production kitchen at Urgenziano, which will allow us to improve the quality and variety of food offerings district-wide. So I want to be clear, a lot of work is being done.
Right.
I just want to also be clear that any work we can do, we owe it to the community to do.
So how does this jibe with the mass, getting money from the state and that whole process that the district is going through?
So that is going on in parallel with this.
Okay.
I think, if you want all of the details and all of the very wonky details, you can find those on the website. I think the thing that the community at large needs to be aware of is that we're looking at a November 2026 vote for a debt exclusion to cover our half of, or whatever it's going to be, of the Winter Hill.
Yeah. On that note, we have to stop. This has been School Committee Update. Have a good day.